Well, Phyllis Bennis is a fellow at the Institute for Policy Studies and the author of the book Understanding Palestine and Israel. She's joining us from Washington, D.C. Always a pleasure to have you with us on Al Jazeera. Ms. Bennis, thank you for your time. We've once again got the UN Secretary-General 2 days in a row calling for an independent investigation at what's happening at these distribution sites and for those responsible to be held to account. Israel doesn't allow those things to take place. So in the meantime, what action can and should countries be taking now to put pressure on Israel to stop killing and starving innocent civilians?
Thanks, Elizabeth. You know, there is a host of options available to every member state. And what's different now this year is that these are now required by international law. These are not simply sanctions that a government may choose to impose or not choose to impose. But if we look at three different parts of international law, the preliminary ruling and provisional measures imposed by the International Court of Justice, that was in early 2024, the advisory opinion issued by the International Court of Justice in July of last year, and the General Assembly resolution in September of last year that took into account everything that the International Court had ruled for and said these are now things that ordinary governments, all governments, are obligated to carry out. So there's a menu of options for individual governments. There's questions of an arms embargo, a comprehensive arms embargo. That means not buying or selling arms to or from Israel. It means preventing the transit of weapons or military equipment over their territory or in their airspace. And it means not enabling the transfer of weapons. For example, the government in Colombia has cut off fuel supplies. They've stopped selling coal to Israel in order to impose restrictions on their weapons. Other sanctions that are possible for individual governments, trade sanctions, corporate sanctions, banking sanctions, tourism, travel bans are called for, and asset freezes, and especially any of those things that help continue the illegal settlement, which was ruled by the International Court of Justice to be entirely illegal. And so the entire process of building settlements is now illegal, and the settlers are supposed to be gone by September of this year.
And yet so few countries have taken any of the actions that you're mentioning. We heard from the Chilean President Gabriel Boric just a few days ago saying that they are going to take some of those actions, not buying weapons from Israel and fast-tracking a ban on not buying any goods from occupied Palestinian territories. But how do you think countries that are signatory to the Genocide Convention can justify their lack of action? Can they justify it legally by saying that they don't believe what's happening is genocide?
None of them are saying that. I think there are countries, including my own government, which denies the facts on the ground that are really impossible to deny if you look at it from the vantage point of what you see rather than what you wish you could see, to say that this is not genocide. But I think that what we are seeing is that increasing numbers of countries are taking on a variety of these possibilities. In Brazil, for instance, there is the question of whether Israeli soldiers, ordinary soldiers who come to Brazil for a vacation after serving in Gaza, might be held liable for potential war crimes, whether they could be held for investigation. In one case, the Israeli embassy had to sweep up several soldiers in that position and whisk them back home so they would not be caught up in that situation. So some governments are beginning this process. The thing is, we know that this works. There's a model of this in the 1980s around apartheid South Africa, where there was a similar situation where Security Council resolutions were put forward and routinely vetoed by the United States, sometimes by Britain as well, over and over again. They would then go to the General Assembly, which passed very strong resolutions calling for sanctions of all sorts. And the response would be, well, that doesn't matter because General Assembly resolutions are not binding in international law. But it turned out that people in those countries all over the world formed anti-apartheid movements which began to put pressure, more and more pressure, heavier and heavier pressure on their own governments to impose sanctions, to stop trading with apartheid South Africa, to stop allowing it to function in the United Nations. And eventually, enough countries did that the United States government itself started to feel the pressure and eventually gave in to the pressure that was here.
But as you're saying, it was an eventual process. And meanwhile, we are watching innocent men, women and children being massacred on our televisions every day. Is there anything that the UN can do that cannot be blocked by that US veto now?
The UN General Assembly has done this, has said that it is a violation of international law to, for example, provide weapons to Israel that might be used in the occupied territory, which of course includes Gaza. The US is violating those resolutions. Countries could stop allowing US officials to enter their airspace, could stop allowing planes carrying weapons to Israel to land in their airspace, such as what happens now in Ireland. Ireland has been very supportive of Palestinian rights, and yet it turns out now there's been an investigation showing that plane loads of weapons are illegally landing in Ireland, violating the Irish own laws on this. So there's a bunch of things. You're right, Elizabeth, to say that the issue is the urgency of now, the people that are being killed now on a daily basis. I don't know what else can be done on a daily basis right now, but if governments began to carry out this menu of options to arrest under universal jurisdiction any Israeli officials that might be accountable for some of these war crimes and holding them in prison, I think we would see an end to some of that practice. If some of the countries that buy weapons from Israel, mainly military surveillance equipment, announced today they will no longer buy any goods from Israel or from the occupied territories, that would have a huge impact on the Israeli economy. My government is already paying 40% of the Israeli military budget. If more pressure is put on the Israeli economy because countries stop buying this top-level surveillance equipment from these Israeli startup companies, that will have an enormous impact right away. Ultimately, the United States is providing 68% of the weapons Israel is using. If that was cut off, the attacks would stop within a couple of weeks. We don't yet have the capacity in this country to stop it. We are trying very hard to stop that arms shipment. There is a new level of public opposition in the United States, in the Democratic Party, one of the two big parties. 77% of people say no more arms to Israel. That has never happened before, but we don't yet have the power to make it happen right now. That is the challenge of what we're seeing in front of us. But because this is being seen, this is the first genocide to be publicized all around the world, and where those carrying it out brag about what they're doing, saying we are attacking everyone in Gaza. Our enemy is not Hamas, one Israeli official just said. Our enemy is everyone in Gaza. That's an acknowledgement that their attacks constitute genocide.
Yeah, and they've made those comments despite them being brought up in the genocide case against them early on at the International Court of Justice. Phyllis Bennis, thank you so much for your expertise as always. We appreciate it.
Thank you.